Start a business in an area that you have a network, and you're passionate about. Because it doesn't matter what you see as a business opportunity, people are going to invest in you as the beginning of a business. And the
Mm.
only way they're going to invest in you is if you're authentic and you know what you're doing. And you can read about it all you want, but it comes really from your heart.
Hey everyone, this is Devin Miller here with another episode of the Inventive Journey. I'm your host, Devin Miller, the serial entrepreneur that's grown several startups into 7 and 8 figure businesses, as well as the founder and CEO of Miller IP Law, where we help startups and small businesses with their patents and trademarks. Now, if you ever need help with yours, just go to strategymeeting.com and we're always here to help. Now, today we have another great guest on the podcast, Kate Eisler. If I say all right, Isler or Eisler? I'm going
You
to
got
say
it.
Eisler. And Kate is, I don't know, not a normal journey, but I don't know what a normal journey even is. So everybody's journey is a bit different. But she is I think a 2008 college graduate, but I think there was a big gap there was a reasonably large gap between high school and going to college. But backing up a bit from there, so she grew up for 10 years in a hotel. Her dad was an innkeeper at the hotel, grew up in the South, and then from there kicked up on Seattle, or went up to Seattle and did that for a period of time. Just there, 21, went up and did that for a period of time. Worked for an advertising firm. Had a friend told her that she should apply to be for a startup at, I think, Microsoft at the time in 1989, and then went and worked for France. It worked in France for a period of time, which we'll get into that a bit more. Worked abroad after 20 years there, came back into the U.S., founded a startup for digital health, and then during this time went back to school, got her degree, graduated, and then decided to kind of celebrate women in the workplace. And so that is kind of led her to where she's at today. So with that much as a high and quick level overview, welcome on the podcast, Kate.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I have to say, I'm a 2018 graduate, so I'm a new college graduate.
All right, I meant to say 2018 if I did not, so my apologies.
Good.
But so kicking it off or diving a bit back in your history, take us back to a little bit of staying in a hotel as your dad's an innkeeper and how that kind of, or where your journey started from there.
So I never really think of myself until very recently as an entrepreneur. I
Mm,
was kind of I learned about people from growing up in a really public place. And so how to watch people, how to, understand how to work with them. And I kind of made my own way. I never, if the rule wasn't written down that it was a rule,
mm.
well, I kind of went around and thought, why don't I try that? And so, living in a hotel in that public place taught me a lot about that. And so as I started my journey as a young adult, I just, sort of picked what seemed interesting to me.
Mm.
And as you said, moved around a lot when I was a child, but then picked Seattle on a map and thought this is a great place to live.
So is it just
And
one of those kind of like when you see in the movie, oh, I'll throw a dart or oh, I'll put my finger down randomly, and no, that sounds good.
almost, I had met a friend. I went to a little bit of an alternative high school program, and I had met a friend from Seattle, and I was enamored with her life. It seemed so urban and so interesting. And so I thought, well, that sounds like fun. I'll do that. And so I knew one person, and so packed up, sort of everything I owned and came to Seattle with, very little, and found a job pretty quickly, and sort of started my life here.
So when you pack up, come to Seattle, and you're saying, okay, this sounds like a great place. So how did you go about finding a job in a city that you didn't really have any connections or know anybody, and it was just kind of a new place? How did you or make that jump into working life?
So I had studied photography, and I had AA degree that I had finished in Colorado. And so
Hmm.
I went to work at a film lab, and, it was as simple as that, just a retail film lab. And then I got another my first office job as a receptionist, for
Hmm.
sure. That was, high profile receptionist,
Hmm.
and worked at a film lab on the weekends, and just sort of started a network and started meeting people and trying to figure out what I wanted to do. And advertising looked like fun as the next move. And so I
Mm,
did work for a local ad agency, a small one in Seattle. And the woman who I had taken her job had gone to work for some tech company.
hmm,
And about 2 years into it, she called me and said, I've never met you, but I know the job you're doing, and we're looking for people with your skill set at this tech company. So do you want to come interview? And
hmm,
so, as you said, I did. And I was like, oh my gosh, I don't, it was, a different commute. And I didn't know anything about technology, but I figured, what the heck? And so I started with Microsoft,
hmm,
you know, in 1989, the end of 1989, and there were about 3,000 people worldwide.
hmm,
And it was kind of all hands on deck, and it was a ton of fun. We all were trying to solve problems and really trying to make Bill Gates's vision of a computer in every office and in every home real. And it was roll up your
hmm.
sleeves and jump in. So,
And so I think so. You worked with Microsoft now for how long did you stay there?
well, I did 2 tours of duty. So I did, about 10 years the first time and about 10 years the second time, and I had a break of almost 5 years in between.
Hmm,
So after I had been there a few years, I got an email about, a guy who was moving to France for a big promotion, and I was like, "If he can do that, I totally can do that." And
hmm,
so I raised my hand and they said, "How about the Middle East?" And I'm like, "Well, wait a minute. What? What are you talking about?" And so I talked my husband into quitting his job. We had a baby at the time, and we moved to Dubai long before it was Vegas. So in 1993, we landed in Dubai.
hmm. So
And
now, and so again, now you're so, but that was still with Microsoft. Is that correct? That you're saying,
it was
okay, now I have this opportunity. I want to go see a bit of the world or change of scenery type of thing. So I'll continue to work with Microsoft, but I'll do it, for at a foreign location for a while. And I think you stayed foreign for was it 20 years? Is that about right?
basically, yeah, in different countries, different subsidiaries. And it was very much very entrepreneurial compared to the big corporate
Mm,
environment that happens in the US, because I was in subsidiaries from, 20 people up to 200 people. And so it
mm,
was a really different operation. And we were all very concerned with all the things that entrepreneurs are concerned with, which was, how do we make money? How do we make customers happy? Because we were on the front lines.
mm,
And so it was really fun. So I did 10 years, left and went and worked for a startup for a few, and then came back, but again, overseas in the subsidiaries. And so I left there in 2014
mm.
for the final time.
So now, question. So what So that, a long time you were stationed abroad, worked with Microsoft for quite a long time, and doing that. What made you decide? Okay, I've had enough, or I want to try something else, or I'm coming back to the States and doing that. What was kind of that pivotal point or that decision maker point?
So really the catalyst was more personal than business to
Mm,
come back. I had 3 children by that time, and they were getting to the point, one was going to college and one was going to high school. And so it was just time. It was just
mm,
time to make a change. And when I got back to the US and got into the big corporate mechanism, I was miserable.
mm,
And I was like, this has been great, and I realized what great training some of it had been,
mm.
and thought, how hard can a startup be? I say that in jest
Now,
because I
yeah,
would,
little did you know that startups are not always as easy as they appear.
oh my goodness. And so I gave it a shot and ran a digital health startup. A
Mm,
friend of a friend had an idea. He had money set up, but the investor wouldn't give him any money until he had somebody to run the business. So I jumped in.
mm,
And I think I made every mistake that a first time founder makes. I spent too much money too fast. I assumed that because the market opportunity was great, that everyone would love my product, you know, all the things.
So now you say, okay, I'm going to do a startup. I'm going to try my hand at it. It's not as hard as it looks, and find out it is as hard as it looks type of a thing. And so, where did you go? So you did the startup for a period of time, and then for with the digital health, and then did that one wind down, and you decided to go to school, or kind of how did you transition, or say, okay, I did that for a period of time. Now I'm going to go back and get a degree.
Well, it was kind of in the middle of all of that. I was feeling like, I'm running this startup and I feel like, I have some unfinished personal business. And
Mm,
so I would stop every Friday afternoon about 5 o'clock and do homework. And so I had to go to class, one of the classes, and then I had two online classes to do. And
mm,
so I would stop work and write papers and, read and do all my homework on the weekends and then engage again Sunday night. I'd be back to startup CEO. And so it was
mm,
and I didn't tell anyone because, I'm sure that investors definitely don't want to hear, great, you're running my business, spending my money, and you're going to school. And so that was, I was very cagey about that. But
mm,
when I finished that, that was sort of the last year and I was running out of money and I had raised a few times, but it was really clear that we were not getting the momentum we needed to go forward. And I was sort of frustrated, and a very good friend from Europe had moved here and said, "Why don't we celebrate International Women's Day in the
mm,
US?" And I thought, "Oh my gosh, well, that will make us all feel better. Let's do that."
mm.
And so, after, quite a while, I started a nonprofit to say, let's celebrate. And so we host an annual event every year, the Thursday before International Women's Day. So this year it's March 4th, and it's a virtual event. And it really is to talk about women's contributions, and entrepreneurial contributions are a huge piece of that.
Mm.
And so we do that. And I will say, sort of fast forwarding, ran that nonprofit for a while until COVID hit.
Mm.
And as a result of COVID, I started looking around and thinking there is no e-commerce site that is focused on women's business. And so I started a new startup in May, as
So
you
no, go ahead.
know, as you do in a pandemic, start a business.
That's right. Well, I always look, anytime there's a change in the marketplace, meaning something shakes things up, people have to adjust, they have to pivot. You always kind of have a couple different options. One is you kind of hunker down and try and wait it out and hope that things go back to normal. Or two, a lot of times when you have a change in the marketplace, you say it reveals the chinks in the armor, things that people can improve or otherwise doing that when business is well and things are profitable that nobody ever thinks to do. When you hit that adjustment, then it presents those opportunities. So I always think that anytime there's change in the marketplace, it's a great time to figure out how to start a business, or how to navigate or pivot to incorporate that into what you're doing. So as you now, so you get the marketplace, and I think it's the wmarketplace.com. Is that right?
That's right.
So you get that up and going, and you've been doing that for a few months, and I assume you're building it, growing it, and it's focused kind of on a marketplace for women-owned or women-run businesses. Is that right?
It is. And it's really an interesting evolution in how quickly it's gone. Some of it is all the lessons that I learned that I did wrong in the first startup. I
Mm,
now know that. And so I'm very respectful of, oh my gosh, we're not going to make that decision. But with the W Marketplace, we launched in 2000, or we launched September 29th, and we have our goal was to have 300 products on the site,
mm,
women-owned merchants and service providers and nonprofits to list women's resources.
mm,
And so right now we have over 2,000 products on the site and over 300 merchants and service providers. And the interesting thing about this, as you just pointed out, the change in the marketplace is there is no question that the pandemic has had a disproportionate effect on women.
mhm,
And I see such an opportunity to create a new normal, because as women are leaving the workforce, there is a lot of effort to say, put them back to work, help them with virtual job fairs and those sorts of things. But
Hmm.
to me, that isn't, no one is saying those jobs are coming back. And
Hmm.
so my approach is let's create a new normal. Let's create entrepreneurs that are either starting businesses, pivoting businesses, or scaling them online because that's where our economy is going.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, last night we welcomed 42 new merchants and service providers in a partnership with the Small Business Development Center in Southern California that are on the marketplace that actually got orders their first day on the marketplace.
Hmm. That's
And
awesome.
so I think it's the new normal. I mean, let's shift things to where women are, that
Hmm.
they can, build their own businesses. Why not?
No, I definitely think that makes great sense. Now, one or a couple of questions I've always kind of wondered, just now going to the the women marketplace and that type of a thing is, I guess the first question I'll back up is, was this one where it was self funded, or did you have investors come on, or how did you kind of get things up and going in order to get the marketplace launched?
So a little of both. So we started self-funding. I talked to a friend of mine when I had the idea that was being laid off, and she said, I'm about to be affected. And so I want a piece of this.
Hmm.
And so we bootstrapped until December, and we were growing so quickly that we thought our MVP would last us 6 to 9 months. And
Hmm.
so months in, it was really clear that we had leveraged some off the shelf platforms, that we were outgrowing the functionality very quickly.
Hmm.
And so we opened a round of funding on December 1st and closed it on December 3rd.
So, and one question kind of that came up on that is, when or listening at, I guess, quote unquote, typical investors, or some investors, they would raise the issue of, hey, you're cutting off kind of half the marketplace, place, right? In the sense that it's a women run. It's probably, I'm making assumptions, so correct me where I'm wrong, but a women centric marketplace in the sense that about half of the world is going to be men or the other sex type of thing. So how do you did you run into that? Did you have to face it? Were investors or people that you're reaching out to very positive and supportive, or was it kind of a mixture? Or kind of how did you deal with, hey, we're niching down, or we're focusing on this part of the marketplace? Was it an advantage? Was it a disadvantage? Or was it indifferent?
No, there's a couple of things there is one of the lessons that I learned was to pick my investors wisely.
Mm,
And I think that's a really key because no one invests cold, right? You have
hmm.
to have a relationship and you have to cultivate that relationship over time. And so we picked our investors very wisely.
Mm,
And when we approach people, the fact is that, half of the population is male, but 60% of the new businesses started are by
mm,
female.
hmm.
40% of those are women of color, and they make on average twice as much revenue faster than men's
Hmm.
businesses.
Okay.
And so, there is some fact in it and there's some finance that you have to back up your story. And so when we looked at that and said, here are the facts that we will appeal to our audience, not only from a merchant and service provider, but from a consumer. Women make 85% of consumer purchasing decisions,
Mm,
but are rarely marketed to. And so, we put all those business facts together. So when we think about women for women, that is 50% of the population, but from an economic force, they could be much stronger.
mm.
And so we use data. And I think that that's a really important thing is because you have to have the passion, but you also have to have the numbers to back that up.
No, and I think that's a great point. I think that any business you're in, whether it's a women's marketplace or women owned women owned businesses, or you're in tech, or you're in medical devices, or whatever that might be, is there's a difference between just getting money from an investor, trying to just get money wherever it comes, versus actually doing your homework, finding investors that, one, fit your mission and what you're doing, but also two, that's kind of fits their investment strategy, because not all investors are created equal. They're all having different strategies. They're all having different focuses or things that their fund goes towards, and also that they can add that value back to you guys. So it's not just money, but it's for the business, that they can have those connections or support or contacts that'll help to grow the business. So I think that mirrors a lot of what you found as well.
That's so right. The other thing is I think that you forget as a founder because, we are very money and investment driven on some levels, for sure, because we need to pay the bills and we need to pay the people. And, that there's some anxiety around that to look for money. But also don't forget that you are going into business with these people. They're going to be around. And so your investors have to be people that not only are advantageous to your business, but that you want to be involved in your business for the long haul. Because if you're going to have a successful business, they're going to be there. And, their opinion counts,
Mm.
their input counts. And I think that that's one of the lessons that I learned right off the bat, that there were people in my first startup that I might not have ever done business with, all things being even.
Mm.
I think that's a really interesting piece.
No, and I definitely agree. So now we've kind of brought up to you've got the business launch, building it. You brought on 2,000 plus, different products or in different vendors and whatnot. So kind of looking now 6 to 12 months in the future, kind of where do you see things headed next? Where things, how do you see that playing out, and what's kind of the plan?
I think that, we are experimenting with some really exciting things. We did, as I said, we brought on a bunch of new merchants and service providers last night, and we did a live broadcast. And so we're almost doing W Market TV, allowing women to present their products through our platform on a video so that you can get to know them. And I think that that's a really unique move in the market. We all think, okay, well, Amazon's the big gorilla around, but
Mhm.
that's one shopping venue. I think that there is lots of room for others. And I think that we are in a place where 2.1 million women are out of the workforce and looking for either to support one another or to get into business.
Mm.
And so I see us continuing to grow very quickly because there's a need for it. We've had, to grow as quickly as we have in such a short period says there's pent-up demand.
Mm.
And so
No, I think.
yeah, I mean, I see us growing and I'm really excited about it. And I do want to point out that we are women owned, but we're also gender balanced. And so if there is a business that is not necessarily a big business, but even a bigger business that has good gender hygiene, meaning good policies, diversity in their leadership team, their employee scores are good, we will not turn them away.
No, I
So
think that's a great trajectory and a lot of opportunity. I mean, I think that too often people a bit get scared off by the Amazon and saying, "Oh, they dominate." There's that's the marketplace to be, and there's no other opportunity. And yet, I think that now you're closing the door on a lot of opportunity that you can grow the business, you can explore things that Amazon isn't doing, and that they're not interested or doesn't fit within their business model. Means it provides a lot of opportunity. So I think it's great that that's the trajectory and that's where you guys are headed.
mhm.
Well, as we've kind of now wrapped through your journey, it always is a good transition to talk a little bit about the two last questions I always have at the end of each podcast. So, the first question I always ask is along your journey, what was the worst business decision you ever made, and what did you learn from it?
Oh my gosh, I thought of these and I have a few. One is the confession of I announced a version of Windows 3.0, that was one of the biggest versions, 6
Mm.
weeks before it was ever supposed to be announced, and I did it in a big way in the press. So that was
Mm.
kind of, but more recently, I got investors that were not helpful to my business, and
Mm.
that was a big mistake, as we've just talked about. Partners in there that didn't agree with my business decisions, and it was difficult.
Mm. No, and I like the point, and it's probably reiterating. First of all, the first one of making him announce, it's funny in the sense that first of all, it's kind of funny to look back and say that was a big mistake, but also it's easy to do. I've done do a newsletter or you do a marketing campaign, and it's easy to when you're doing things to get the date wrong or just put it in that one little spot, and then you can't take it back, and it's always one to know. But I think the bigger one that I like to talk about is the investors, and kind of almost hitting the point we had is that don't just look for investors for money, because when you take on investor dollars, you're really taking on additional partner in the relationship of the business. They now have ownership, they have partial control depending on how much you give up, and they are certainly going to have input to your business, which can be absolutely beneficial and worthwhile, or it can be the worst mistake ever because they are now pushing you in a direction that you don't want to go, or it's not good for the business, and now you've given up some of that control. Or sometimes if you sell off the majority of your company over a period of time to enough investors, investors. You've given up complete control, and now they're going in a direction that it's no longer even fun or what you envisioned, or it's not the right decision. So I definitely think being judicious about bringing on investors and not just thinking about it as a sole source of revenue, but also a way to either help or hinder the business is a great lesson to learn. So now, as we jump to the second question, which is if you're talking to somebody that's just getting into a startup or a small business, what'd be the one piece of advice you'd give them?
Start a business in an area that you have a network, and you're passionate about. Because it doesn't matter what you see as a business opportunity, people are going to invest in you as the beginning of a business. And the
Mm.
only way they're going to invest in you is if you're authentic and you know what you're doing. And you can read about it all you want, but it comes really from your heart. And the
No,
successful business is right from your heart.
No, I definitely agree. And I think that more and more the marketplace is shifting towards authenticity, meaning they don't just want just a product, but they actually want to know that there's a cause behind it, there's a story behind it, there's a reason why I should support this business, and it's having certainly an impact in the marketplace. And I think in a lot of ways a positive one, that it is going to continue to shift in that direction. So finding that authentic thing that you love, that you're passionate about, and that you can make money at is a great way to fit into that, that evolution. So, well, just as a reminder to everybody, we do have the bonus question after the normal episode. So stay tuned if you want to hear the a little bit about intellectual property as we turn the tables and Kate gets asked me a question. But as we wrap up for the normal episode, if people want to reach out to you, they want to find out more, they want to be a customer, they want to be a client, they want to be a vendor, they want to be an investor, they want to be an employee, they want to be your next best friend, any or all of the above, what's the best way to reach out and find out more?
So there's a couple of ways, certainly on the wmarketplace.com, all one word.
Hmm.
And another great way is I've just releasing a book. Actually, March 2nd, my memoir releases, and it's called Breaking Borders.
Hmm.
And they can definitely be my best friend because I tell really truthful stories about the good, the bad, and the ugly of career and family,
Hmm.
traveling all around the world with them and trying to manage a career with 3 children and a husband. And so that is absolutely how they can get a hold of me. Or I'm on all the social channels at Kate Eisler and kateeisler.com. So any of that, they're more than welcome to.
Awesome. Well, I definitely encourage everybody to check out the book or pick it up. And it sounds like it's a great read. And I look forward to launching and I'll pick it up as well. And then also reach out to you for support the W Marketplace as well as all that you have going on and reach out and find out more. So, well, as we wrap up, if you're now, first of all, thank you for coming on the podcast, Kate. It's been a pleasure. Now, if you're a listener and you have your own journey to tell, we'd love to have you on the podcast and and share your journey. Just go to inventiveguest.com to apply to be a guest on the podcast. 2, if you're a listener, 1, make sure to click subscribe so you know when all of our awesome episodes come out in your podcast player, and leave us a review so that new people can find out about the podcast as well. Last but not least, if you ever need help with patents, trademarks, or anything else with your business, feel free to reach out to us at Miller IP Law by going to strategymeeting.com. So now as we transition over and we get the bonus question, it's a little bit of always flipping the tables. If I always get asked the questions on the normal episode, but now it's you get to ask a question to me, which is for intellectual property, what is your number one or top question?
So I have filed patents before on technology and with API technology and, pretty cut and dried things.
Mm,
But with the W Marketplace, there is a lot of intellectual property that is going into how we're building a community,
hmm
how we are shaping. And I don't know how to protect that property. And if it is protectable, because I'm very clear that we are not a technology first company. We are a community company that is supported by technology.
Yeah. So a few things come to mind, and it's always a question of, hey, we've got a great idea now. Is it protectable, or how is it protectable? And sometimes the answer is it's just you have to outcompete everybody in the marketplace, and you have to just stay ahead of the competition, which is definitely a way to do it. Now, a couple ways that you could is one is always on the branding side, right? So a lot of times when you're building a community, is much of the reason that people come to that community as opposed to somewhere else is because of the brand, because they know what you guys stand for, what you do. So whenever you're building a brand where that's where people associate it with, trademarks is always a great place. And so, getting the name of the marketplace, the W marketplace, or a logo or a catchphrase, something of that nature. And if you're thinking of some great brands, Nike, Apple, M&M's, Coca-Cola, a lot of their value, and the reason that people keep coming back, you can buy a different cola or knockoff cola drink, but the reason people always go buy a Coke or a Pepsi or whatever is because they like that brand and they like the taste. So that's always one to think about, is on the trademark side, is to protect the brand. Now, if you're to get on the patent side, patents are generally, you have to have it tied to a technology that makes something better, right? So in the sense that, hey, if what you've done, and nothing wrong, is you built a marketplace where a lot of people can come together, they can have a specific cause and they can do that, but you're not really improving on the technology, you're going to have a difficult time getting a patent on it, because there isn't anything that's improved on the technology side other than you just simply built a great marketplace that is a place for them to come. Now, the alternative is let's say, and without getting into the details, you are having different ways that you could present women's products, and so or women marketplace, such that you're doing and I'm making it up a bit, but data analytics, such that this is how we're doing it, or we're presenting it in a new and different way, such that we're bringing a lot of different products together, and the way that you stitch that together, the way that you make all the products work, so that they can have it, get the right sales product, and people can identify what type of products they want. If you're improving the technology in order to make the platform, then there's that opportunity to go on the patent side. The last one is the way that you can kind of look about protecting it, is kind of more on the copyright side, which is, hey, if we really have some images that really we love that portray our business, that give it a special, unique look and feel to it, then you're going to want to say, we don't want somebody else to come along and copy that look and feel to it. We don't want them to have a similar looking marketplace because ours is unique. Then you're going to want to look at more on the copyright of the images and the videos, or the portrayal, or the way that things are written, or those type of things that really make or set your marketplace apart. So those are kind of, if I were to look at kind of the marketplace, the different ways that you can start to incorporate intellectual property to kind of build that fence or that protection around it. Does that make sense, or any follow-up questions?
It does. It's really helpful, because I think that we have pieces of all three of those things. And it's a matter of, where we're going to invest to protect, because I know that that is an expensive road, all of it.
No, and I think that's always, I can give you a lot of different ways that you want to protect, but usually you're going to say, what is it what is it that sets our product apart? And and then the kind of the way you always say is, if somebody else were to come along and do X, whether it's copy our brand, copy our technology, copy our our information, our pictures and our videos, which one of them would hurt the worst? Which one would you say, ouch, that that affects our business? And that's where you start. So if you're saying, hey, yes, we have some technology over here, but we really have a strong brand that we're going to be putting a lot of effort and time and money behind, let's make sure to protect the brand first. If on the other hand, we got some great technology that's really going to set us apart, set us up to be ahead of the competition for years to come, and yes, we have a brand, but the brand is one where, if the technology is the one that somebody comes along and copies or rips off type of a thing, that's what's where going to hurt. That's where you start to focus. So that's kind of where a lot of times you want to focus, is more on wherever the biggest value of the brand is, or the biggest value of the company is going to be.
Yep. And that's helpful. I appreciate that.
All right. Well, with that, there's a bonus question, a little bit of insight into a bit of intellectual property into my world. With that, we'll wrap up the podcast episode. Thank you again, Kate, for coming on. It's been fun to have you on, hear about what you're doing, and wish the next leg of your journey even better than the last.
Thank you so much. It was great to talk.